Welcome to a spooky episode of Millennial TeaV. We are your ghost hosts, Liz, Candace, and Adrienne, and tonight we are conducting our second annual Halloween episode. We have a special guest, Liz's mom, to tell a scary story that happened to her many years ago. We will be reading some spooky listener stories, and we will be talking about the scariest episodes of Are You Afraid of the Dark? Before we get into these spooky segments, we wanted to let you know that this episode is also being filmed. If you'd like to watch, you can find us on YouTube at Millennial TeaV Podcast. And if you're not following us yet, you can do so on Instagram, Reddit, and Facebook at Millennial TeaV. You can also email us at millennialtv@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. Listen at your own risk as we get into the episode. Dun, dun, dun.
Submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society.
So to start us off, we pre-recorded this interview with my mom, Coco, about a ghost story that happened to me and her almost 20 years ago. All right. Well, I'm super excited to introduce my mom on the podcast, finally.
Yay.
Welcome.
Yay. Thank you.
She goes by Coco, and yeah, she's our number one fan, and we're excited to tell our spooky story.
Yeah, I'm excited to finally hear it. I feel like we've had some build up here.
A little bit of build up, I know. We had to do some writing and research to be we have to remember all of the things.
Yeah.
And, so yeah, we've been doing a little bit digging this week.
We can't wait.
I know. Spooky season has commenced. We are ready.
Yes.
And we all love creepy, scary stories.
Yes. Yeah.
So how
absolutely.
awesome to have someone else here today that loves the same.
Yes. Yes.
So when I was a senior in high school, my mom worked at a chiropractor clinic in downtown Plymouth, which is a city in Michigan. Plymouth is a really old historical town, but it's a super cute little Main Street area. They have lots of shops. It's where all of the festivals are. If you've seen the Scream 4 movie, that's actually where they filmed it. So it's you can tell that it looks like a little tiny,
Sure.
hometown sort of feels to it. Yeah, so the chiropractor facility, it was set in what used to be a house in downtown Plymouth. So it wasn't an office space. It was just an old house that they restored to make a chiropractor office out of. It was on, the street name is Pennyman Avenue. And we didn't know this before, but we just learned this week that they've actually been doing ghost tours of downtown Plymouth on Pennyman Avenue. So there are houses where they'll tell the history of these houses.
Oh my
which
gosh.
I was that's a crazy coincidence. And one of the guys that they do on the tour, his name was John Gale, and he was a grocery store owner in Plymouth. But his house that they feature on this walking tour was a few houses down from where we were in this chiropractic clinic. So it's just, that's just weird. It was the same street and all of that stuff. So do you want to tell about how you learned about the job?
Yeah, so I went into, there was a quaint little home decor store called Gabriella's, and I went in there and I asked the owner if he needed help. It was fall, and so they go to the homes from the 1800s and they decorate people's houses, and then they have walking tours come in, and so he was like, "Oh man, I don't need any help, but my chiropractor does." And so he's like, I'll give her your name. So I'm like, okay. And then that's how I got connected there.
Don't you love the small town vibes of that?
Yes.
I don't need help, but my chiropractor does. Let me give you their number. I love that.
Well, and that you would just walk up to a store to ask if they needed help.
True. So I was then hired, and
well, I came to the job interview with her actually, and we were just talking about that earlier today.
Besties. We still
I love that.
I remember we went and it was really late. It wasn't really late at night, but it was really dark outside, and she had this job interview with this lady, and it was, before smartphones existed, and I didn't bring anything to do. And I just have this memory of sitting in the like waiting room lobby for like 40 minutes. And I'm just like sitting there like, like, this is weird. And there was nobody else there because it was like after hours.
Mm-hmm.
So the job interview itself was like very long and like very detailed for like, and the position you had was just like a like front desk, answering phones, making appointments, things like that. So it wasn't like you were a chiropractor,
Right.
They weren't just going to have you get in there and start cracking backs.
Do a quick tutorial. And so the like feel of the house though, it was really interesting because like, so the lobby waiting room area is what would have been the living room in the house. And then like the adjustment rooms are what would have been like bedrooms. And like there was like a whole upstairs like attic area, but that was employees space only, right? So it was just like a really interesting vibe, like it didn't feel like a doctor's office.
So funny, my dentist office is like that. It's like an old house.
Really?
And when I first went for the first time, I was so confused because it's like it's on a corner and it literally looks like a house. There's a little tiny like dentistry sign on the outside. So I walk in and I'm like, and you're like surprised that there's like a front desk and like there's like all these things. So I totally understand what you're talking about when you say that. I was like so confused by that. And in little tiny small towns, you find this often that these old houses are like, we even have an old house that's converted into a restaurant. So like, it's very common, but if you live in like a bigger city, you probably have never seen that.
And it's like, jarring the first time, like you walk in and it's like, oh, I'm in a house. It was probably like pretty quick after you got hired that the lady was like very weird. And so tell them about some of the things that she would make you guys do.
Oh God.
Well, also, some of the employees would be like, they would take bets like how long somebody's going to be there, stay to work, like, oh, she won't last. And I just thought they were being bitchy with each other, and like being how women can be. But now that I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking, oh, maybe it's because of the weirdness. And one of them told me, like, don't be shocked. There's weird things that happen here. And I'm like, okay. But to start it off, we had to start our day in the back area. And we had to put folding chairs in a circle and stand on our folding chairs so we would be closer to the creator, and we had to give ourselves, and it was a long mantra of it was like surrendering to authority, and it was weird. And I remember I thought, I'm never going to be able to memorize this. And like the doctor would stop you mid part of your day and be like, say the mantra. So there was that. It's like, that should have been my first clue to run. Who makes employees stand on chairs and lift our hands?
I'm shocked that you didn't walk out the first day of doing that.
Yeah.
I would have been like, I can't in good faith do this every day.
Yeah. So right beside the reception desk is the hallway, and there was a supply closet right there, like with a bifold door, one that you just pull and it opens, and it was like a shuttered door. And all it was shelves for herbal medicines and stuff like that. But she would go and hide in the closet, and she would, she would talk on the phone, on her cell phone in the closet. And it's like, hello, we can hear you. We can see you in there. But she would often call the front desk to make sure we answered correctly from the closet. She would call, and she had an office. So it's like, why aren't you going in the office? Because she would be in an argument with her partner, and it was just weird. So those were like little things. But then I started getting things like, so the stairway was behind the reception desk that went upstairs, and the stairway more than once, I had this lady, a patient, ask me who the man was walking down behind me, and there was nobody there. And I'd be like, and she goes, "Oh, he's smiling. He's smiling. He's so happy." And I'm like, okay. And that happened several times where she would be like, "How's that nice man today? Is he going to come down?" And I'm like, I don't
Wait,
know.
this is a patient?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
I would be
Was
like...
it the same lady saying that, or different people were saying
No,
it?
it was the same lady.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you just pretended like you knew what she was talking about?
Yeah. Actually, my brother had just died. Unfortunately, my brother had just died, and I kept thinking, "Is it my brother? You know, is it my brother?" He was always happy, and so anyhow, we had that, and then I went into the employee restroom, which was like super tiny because it's an old house, and I was getting ready to sit down, and the lid, the cover was down. I had put the lid up and I'm undoing my pants and stuff, and the lid just goes, yeah. And so I thought, well, that's weird. And I put it back up, and then it did it again. And so I'm like, okay, I'm not going to the bathroom in here. And so I just went into the customer bathroom.
I remember the ladies told you when you first started working there, like about the flashes, seeing like the flashes of light.
Yes. They told me, just don't be alarmed if you see flashes of light. And I did. So either closing, because if it was winter, it was dark, and or opening, it was dark. And it seemed like I was the closer and the opener. But I would see like just a lightning, like a lightning. I can't describe it. And that was before they didn't have security cameras in there back then. And yeah, there would just be
like randomly, like not connected to any lights. Okay.
Yeah, no.
Like when it was, you're like opening the door and it's all dark inside, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So there's that.
And I have to say one other weird thing about the doctor is that I remember, I don't know how, if we saw her doing this or what, but it was like we were, or it might have, I don't remember if it was us or if it was someone else that worked there, but we were in downtown Plymouth at night and the lights were all on in the house. And we were like, what the heck? Like, why would all the lights be on at like 10 o'clock at night? And then it was like, you found out later at some point that she would go back at night and we don't know what she was doing there.
Yeah. We
So
don't know.
The doctor would go back to the office at night
by herself. Yeah. And
do you think she was like doing work? Because I know like at my office, my doctor will go in after hours to like catch up on charts or calling patients or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah, but maybe.
Or like, no, do you think it was just really weird?
No, she was very, very weird.
It's very intense.
Yeah,
I'm like trying to justify it. You guys are like, no.
I know. Anyone else would probably be like they're doing work, but her making them stand in the circle on their chairs chanting, that's like, that's weird.
That is weird. I know. I'm trying to like, because I work in a medical office, so I'm like trying to relate everything, and I'm like, no, that doesn't have to be weird, but like, no. This is really weird.
Because of the person, it's weird.
Yeah. No, just like the fact that there were flashing lights freaks me out, because like I hate being at the office alone. And I rarely ever close by myself, but like the times that I do, I have to like blast music. Yeah, because I hate like the sun's still out, but I hate being in the office alone. Like I absolutely cannot stand it. It's like terrifying. Like so I can't imagine like having the connotation to this office that you guys are having and then having to be in it alone. Like God bless you for closing.
Yeah.
She always, this is just random, but she always told me I was going to have a humpback.
Oh my God. What?
I know, but she always told me that. You're going to have a hump. I'm like, okay.
Was it because of the way that you leaned, or?
She just would say that, but then she wouldn't be like, here's how to fix that or not have it. She would let me
crack you. Yeah. What kind of like person was she? Like, was she an older lady, younger?
No, she was my age.
Okay.
She was like early 40s at the time. Yeah.
single, or did she have a family? Was she married?
She never had children, but she was, I think, going through a divorce, though, because she would be arguing all the time in the closet. So, which everyone could hear.
Where everyone heard everything.
Even the patients. It was so embarrassing.
Yeah.
Maybe she wasn't arguing with anyone. Maybe it was just like,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we had all that stuff happened, and then we had one night where I was like, I'm never going into that office building again. So at the time, I didn't have my own car, and so I had our car, and she had to close up the office for the night. So I was coming to pick her up at like, I don't know, like 7:00 or something like that. When she had to close, it was like everybody else was gone, and it was just like you have to vacuum and turn off all the lights and just make sure everything's like tidied up for whoever's going to be there the next day. And I was going to just go like help you do that sort of thing. And we have to mention that the basement was like off limits. That was another weird thing. It was like, you don't go into the basement she just like didn't want people in there. And so
red flag.
Yeah,
right.
not good.
Red flag. Heck no. Like, this is like, I learned this shit from Goosebumps. When there's like something in the basement, no.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was weird. But yeah, we were like cleaning up, doing all the things. And then I remember I was in like the living room area, and my mom was like, did you open the basement door? I'm like, no, why would I do that? And so it was opened. And so she closed it. And then I remember you went to get the vacuum out of like a different closet, right? And then when you closed the vacuum door, the basement door was open again by itself. And so you were like, let's clean up as fast as we can. We were like, I'm like, okay. And so I started turning all the lights off in what would have been like the bedrooms, I guess. And I turned one off specifically, and I walked out into the hallway, and then my mom was like, oh, you missed that bedroom, like you missed that light. And I was like, no, I just turned that one off. So I was like, maybe I didn't. So I turned around, I turned it off, and it was like a switch where you have to physically press it down to turn it off. And I literally took 1 foot into the hallway and it turned back on. And I went back in and it was switched up. And that was when I was like, we have to get out of here right now. And I was like flipping out. And she was like, I have to finish vacuuming. Finish the job.
Yeah.
And you finished the vacuuming and stuff. And then like, I was like hyperventilating, and I'm like, we have to get out of here. And then like the last weird thing was that a phone started ringing. But the way that the office building was set up was that if one phone rings, they all ring because they're all like on a connected system. And we just heard one phone ringing upstairs in the like employee area.
And it wasn't, it didn't go to a voicemail.
It just kept ringing.
And ringing.
And so she was like, I have to go see what's up with the phone. And I'm like, let's just leave. But she had to go up there and then tell them what happened when you went up there.
So when I went up there, the fax machine was just spewing out blank pages. Super
Oh my God.
Yeah, and that's when she ran downstairs. And we booked it out of there, and we like, gosh, I think we were like, lock the door as fast as you can, and we, oh my gosh, it was terrifying. And afterwards it was just like, did that really just happen sort of thing? And yeah, it was insane.
Oh my God.
And so when I went up there, the phone stopped ringing, right? And all these pages are just shoot. And the phone stopped ringing, and then it started again, and just I was just like,
it was insane.
Right out of a horror movie.
Yeah.
Totally. So it's like, we don't know what the heck was going on there. I'm assuming it was whatever was in that house was just like messing with us, just like having fun, scaring us, I'm assuming. But that was like the thing for me. I mean, I was like 17 years old, but still I was like, okay, like I believe in all this stuff, because like, how do you explain that?
That
like,
is so...
The light switch thing still like gives me chills when I think about it, because I'm like, I turned it off, and then it literally turned itself on as I walked out the door.
That is so scary. Did you still work there after that?
For a little bit.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And unfortunately, we looked the doctor up, and she
actually died
mysteriously died
last year. Yeah.
Wow.
She was 61, I think.
Mhm.
And I was curious, so I searched her name on Facebook and found like people like doing like, dedication posts to her. But there were people that were like asking what happened, and all of her family members were like, we don't know. Like it just
Oh, really?
yeah, from what we read online at least.
Ah.
So I don't
Yeah.
know.
What would people say? Like, what would she say when you told her about these things happening
Yeah, did
in
you
the
tell her?
office?
You guys told her, really?
No, we talked about it with each other, like the other staff. We would talk about it, and they would be like, "Yep, yep, that's happened to me. Yep." And so yeah, I'll never forget the sound of that of the basement door either. It was truly a.
No.
It just
It's like
was so
horror movie sound effect.
yeah.
Immediately no. Immediately no.
Yeah.
I'm like so out of there. Oh
But
my
you know
gosh.
what? But you know what happened when Lizzie and I were looking up the house this week, and I saw the pictures of the inside? I immediately got anxious, and
Mhm.
I immediately like felt just like
Like those emotions coming back just
yeah,
from
it
the
was
scene. 'Cause
crazy, especially the
yeah.
stairwell. When I saw
Mhm.
the stairwell, I was like,
Yeah.
Yeah, I found a website that like had pictures of the inside of the house and all of the rooms, so it was like, and it looks exactly the same as it
so.
did.
Do you know
So
what the
So
building
anyway,
is now?
it's a realtor company,
Ah,
so still
Ooh.
just like an office place of some sort.
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So
Oh, that's creepy.
Did you physically like see any spirits or anything in the house?
Just the light, the flash of
Mm.
light. And now, when you think about it, it's like, what
what was
was
that?
that
Yeah.
something? I mean, it was
hmm
something.
Yeah.
It was,
Like an energy of some
yeah,
sort, or
yeah. There was also strange smells in the house. I forgot to tell you that.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
just like, what is that? It would like have a super musty old
mm,
smell that like would just come in the
Do you know
day.
that that is like a number one thing of paranormal activity is smells?
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I also got when you said don't go into the basement. What if
Uh-huh.
it's just like a bunch of dead bodies in there?
Oh
oh my
God.
gosh, seriously. Yeah, and they're like, help us.
Yeah. And then you smell the smell and you're like, what is that?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
No, like decaying bodies is a very specific smell.
Yeah,
Like you
yeah,
would,
yeah,
yeah. But like, were you a skeptic prior to this experience, or did you believe in the paranormal?
I believe in God, and so I believe that angels could. I believe angels are real, and that, but these were not angels. So, yes,
Yeah,
because I believe you can have a guardian angel
yeah,
and
absolutely.
Mhm.
an angel unaware. So, but yeah, these were not angels.
You didn't
So,
feel like
Yeah,
the
it
good
wasn't
correct,
good
energy
energy.
from them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
except the guy that would follow me down the steps.
yeah. Maybe he was
Maybe he
looking out
was.
for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
no.
yeah,
Yeah.
Oh my
there
goodness.
you go.
Uh, I enjoyed that a lot. I'm like creeped out now. I
Yeah.
know.
Well, it's not a coincidence then that like all the other businesses on Plymouth, like that street that you
Yeah.
were talking about, is also having similar
Yeah.
stories, I
Mhm.
guess.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah. And they were
Yeah.
all built in like the early 1900s, like all built around the same time. So
Mhm.
I assume they all knew each other and, things like
Mhm.
that.
I wonder if there was any, like, did you do any research to see if there was like any tragic accidents on that street or like any like
Oh,
crazy
you know what?
things?
We didn't check the street. That's a good idea. Because I was trying so hard to find the history of the house, like if I could
Yeah.
find any records of who lived there at some point, and I couldn't find anything. I feel like I'd have to go to the Plymouth Library, and
I'm just wondering if there was like, I don't know, like a street fire or like a something
I didn't even
crazy.
think about that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Wait, so what finally made you leave?
The doctor. She was just crazy.
Yeah.
So
it was the chancing every morning on the chair.
Yeah. Did that occur every single day?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That was like
Yeah.
how they had to start their work shift in the
Mhm.
morning.
And I'm sure like some of the other staff members weren't into it. So like was she like did you just have to fake it?
Yeah, and if she happened to not be there, she would call and make, like, leave me on the phone. You must do the chant. And I'm like, oh,
Gosh.
okay.
That's
So
the
we
reddest
would-
of red flags.
Did she pay well? Because I don't know how much they would have to pay me to put up with that.
Yeah. She had a very strong hold on her employees. So, but me as a God, believing person, I should have said, I'm not doing that. But
Yeah. I know. Absolutely. Yeah. Something doesn't feel right about it. Yeah. Yeah, that's so odd. I'm like, I just
can't visualize that every single morning.
No, and that everybody else went along with it and just did it. I would have to be making really good money to do that every morning.
Do you guys did you guys as staff have theories about her? Was it like a culty thing, like a religious Wiccan thing? What did you guys think?
When I had talked to other staff, they believed that they always said she's in a cult, or we are her cult. Or some of them called her a witch. So which probably is why we couldn't go in the basement. So not that I would want to, but
exactly.
That is even more scary. What was she sacrificing down there?
Exactly. So, but it was good times, and
I remember it was like in that weird in between time right before I graduated high school, before we moved to San Diego. So it was like a in between transition period of your job and stuff like that too.
Job,
You guys are so funny. You're like the Gilmore Girls.
We are.
Yeah.
we are.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that with us. That was definitely a good spooky story. And now I'm going to be thinking about this woman and what her ties were to the occult. Now that was a spooky story. Okay, Liz, your mom is the coolest.
The nicest and the coolest. And that was such a creepy story. Like for that to happen to you guys when you were in high school, like that is so crazy. And I definitely feel like that lady was like a witch.
She was part of the occult for sure.
Totally. Something weird going on there.
That story about like them standing around the chairs in the morning would have been enough to freak me out to never going back ever again. Or calling the police at least. Like that is weird.
I know. I can't believe my mom continued to work there for like 6 months. Like, what were you thinking?
Every day.
Yeah.
Well, we loved meeting your mom and hearing that story. Thank her for sharing that with us. So we reached out to you guys and asked for some spooky stories that you may have had to share of your own. And we did get a few submissions that I'm excited to share with you guys. One of them was submitted via Reddit by user General Cobbler 4415. And the other is less of a story and more of some creepy happenings in my friend Cassie Casorla's house. I went to high school with Cassie and she was nice enough to share with me this story via Facebook. So I'm actually going to start with Cassie's story because it's less of a story and more kind of just a telling, but I thought it was really interesting. So she said that she should preface this with that she's usually fairly sensitive to paranormal stuff and has always had more than a passing interest in witchcraft and the occult, which I think has a big impact on whether or not your like mind and like
is open
to it, right? Like things aren't going to present themselves to you unless you're open, you know? So she grew up where I grew up, which is Cupertino, California. It's a really small town. And she said that her parents' house in Cupertino is haunted. she said that they've got a little girl, probably around 8 years old, and a cat, which I thought was really interesting.
Oh.
I've never heard of a ghostly cat before.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this. So she said the house was originally a 2-bedroom with an attached garage, and her parents converted the garage into a master bedroom, and the original 2 bedrooms just became the back bedrooms, and she used both of them because she was an only child. Super jealous. And the ghost mostly haunted those back bedrooms or the living room. She said that the lights would flicker in the back and they'd get some cold spots, and occasionally items would get moved and go missing and reappear sometime later. And if you listened to our original Halloween episode with my friend Kelsey, this was the kind of stuff that happened in her haunted house as well. So I thought that was really familiar, which kind of gave me chills. And she says sometimes the things would reappear the same day or weeks or months later, but it was never anything super important, which is kind of also parallel to Kelsey's story, although things like keys would go missing, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So she said anytime her parents would do any type of major rearranging of furniture, she felt like the little girl would get upset because the energy of the house felt bad. She says that she's seen her a couple of times, just the kind of corner of the eye thing where you saw something move. And then she knows that the cat is fairly social and likes to hang out on the beds in the back. And she frequently gets a cold spot in the top left corner of her bed where she sits and lounges to watch shows on her laptop. And in the other bedroom in the back of the bed is next to a window, and that gets sunlight during most of the afternoon, and there will frequently be a spot that's a little too cold for how much sun is coming in, and she is guessing that the cat naps in the sunbeams.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. And then she added that her dog passed away about 3 weeks ago at home. It was a childhood dog that was pretty old and had been sick for some time, but she feels like she's been around too. But she actually hopes that she decides to move on and not linger. But she keeps feeling coldness in the evenings in the hallway where they would give her treats and her dental stick at night before bed. And this was an 8-year routine, so she doesn't feel surprised that the dog would remember this. She keeps thinking that she hears her outside in the yard, specifically the sound of her collar jingling, as if she's scratching her head or walking around, but her collar is wrapped around her ashes and they don't have any other pets. And she's also been hearing phantom sound of her toes on the floor in the house.
Oh, that
I know.
I thought really sweet.
I thought the pet thing was super sweet. Who doesn't want to be visited by their ghostly animals that passed, right? That's a beautiful thing. But I do think that some of the stuff about the house actually being haunted was so parallel to Kelsey's that it was like,
what's going on in Cupertino?
Yes, I know.
And this is like Liz's mom's story about that street where all the places are haunted. This is like all like, I don't know if they lived close to each other, but like maybe an area in Cupertino.
Well, I've also told you guys about a girl that I went to high school with. Her name was Vicky. She was on Paranormal Kids in high school, and she actually helps the police with like psychic stuff, which is crazy. She also grew up in that town. And so I think maybe it's just a town full of ghosties. I don't know.
That's so crazy.
But yeah, I mean, I wonder in Cassie's house if the little girl passed away there, because I know like in Kelsey's house there was actually a murder that happened. I wonder if there's any like history there with a little girl and her cat. I don't know. But as Cassie, stay safe.
I know. Thanks for sending us that story.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, I think that her ghost is friendly, which, I mean, that's what we all hope for, is friendly, right? We don't want any malevolent spirits.
No.
Yeah.
Thank you, Cassie, for sharing that with us. So this second story that I'm going to share was, again, it was sent to us via Reddit. And I think that this is a true story, but the author who wrote it is also a writer. So I think it's not embellished, but I think she just made it flowery versus like just telling a straight story the way that Cassie did, which I actually appreciate because I think it makes it creepier. But I'm going to go ahead and read this story. And again, thank you for letting us share this and for sharing it with me. It gave me chills. So, when I moved into my new house a few months ago, I felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. It was an older home with creaky floors and a musty smell that hinted at its age. My friends joked about the charming quirks of old houses, but I didn't think much of it. I was eager to make it my own. At first, everything seemed normal. I unpacked boxes and settled in, but soon I began hearing odd noises. At night, whispers echoed softly from the walls. I told myself it was just the house settling or the wind playing tricks. Still, the feeling of unease crept in. One night, as I lay in bed, the whispers grew louder. I could almost make out words, but they slipped away whenever I tried to focus. I sat up, heart racing, straining to listen. "Help me," a voice seemed to plead. I dismissed it as my imagination, but the feeling of dread lingered. The next day, I mentioned it to a neighbor while we were outside. Her expression changed instantly, worry shadowing her face. "Oh, that house. It has a history. The last owner didn't leave on good terms," she said quietly. "People say she still lingers." My blood ran cold. I hadn't believed in ghosts before, but that night, the whispers returned, clearer than ever. They seemed to fill the room with a palpable energy, almost demanding my attention. Over the following weeks, I tried to ignore the unsettling sounds, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Small items began disappearing from their usual places, only to reappear later, often in odd spots. This is such a theme.
I know.
Yes.
I
Right?
know.
Crazy. I started to doubt my own sanity. One evening, driven by curiosity and fear, I decided to confront whatever was happening. Armed with a flashlight, I made my way to the living room where the whispers were the loudest. I pressed my ear against the wall, heart pounding, and heard a distinct voice. "Get out." I'm so out at that point. Like, you don't have to tell me twice.
Okay.
This is the ghost house now. I understand. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have moved in. Panic coursed through me. I stumbled back, gasping for breath. I wanted to run, but I felt rooted to the spot. I couldn't just abandon the home I had worked so hard to settle into. That night, I lay in bed, sleepless and terrified. The whispers morphed into frantic cries, filling my mind with dread. Just as I was about to drift off, I jolted awake, feeling a presence at the foot of my bed. I squinted into the darkness, but saw nothing. I was alone, or so I thought. The next day, I dug into the history of the house. I discovered that the previous owner, a woman named Margaret, had lived there alone for years and had passed away unexpectedly. Neighbors spoke in hushed tones about her life, tragedy, loss, and a growing madness. Realizing I had to confront whatever was haunting me, I stood in the living room, heart racing. "If you want me to leave, tell me why," I demanded, my voice shaky. The air thickened, heavy with an oppressive silence. Then I heard it again, more urgent. "Help." I was scared, trust me. I moved out the next day.
Oh my
Wow.
gosh.
Ugh.
Yeah.
You know, this just makes me think, like, how no one checks. Okay, I shouldn't say no one, but like people don't check for spirits before they move into a place. But
Yes.
like so much could have happened in that
Mhm.
place. And
Yeah.
shoot, what if you spend so much money buying a
I
house
know.
and doing all that
Yeah.
just to have like,
I can't
you
imagine.
know,
Listen, Jasmine and I always joke that like there is a difference between like Black culture and horror and white culture and horror, because Black people, I'm telling you what, they are not staying in a haunted house. Okay. They are not doing it. It's not happening. I'm not going to the basement to check out what that sound was. I'm not going to go to the library and research about the death. I'm leaving, and that's the ghost house now. That's just bottom line. So I really think, there's that joke that like, in horror movies, like virgins never die and then sluts die first and then Black people. That's like how it goes. The token Black person dies after the slut.
Yes.
But that's really not accurate, because I'm telling you, Black people would not be there. We don't mess with ghosts.
There's no chance that would even happen.
No. I mean, I don't know. I can't speak for all Black people, but myself as a Black person, I'm not staying. I don't want to know who threw who off a roof and not. No, it's fine. I don't need the story. You said get out. I heard you. I'm gone.
I know. It's funny. As into horror stuff as we are, I feel like we'd be the first to run.
Mhm.
How about you, Liz? You too?
Oh, yeah. If I heard get out, bye.
I was talking to this girl I know recently, and she was talking about how, like, one of her friends, she found out recently her husband was, like, possessed. So,
Whoa.
He was feeling really, like, stressed, and I guess, like, just, like, had, like, really, like, heavy, dark energy around him. And then he started feeling sick and like really had like heavy pressure around his neck. And like he went to the doctors, he tried working out, physio, like all this kind of stuff, and he just could never get rid of that feeling on his like back.
Oh my gosh.
And so they decided, after like doing so much, they decided to go to like a Chinese like psychic, I guess, like one of the seers. And then she basically said that there was like a spirit or a demon like attached to him.
Oh no.
And that just like brought me back to watching like Shudder, you know, like how that is like on the back. And so I was so creeped out. She said that what had happened was that he was driving one night along the like highway, and I think it was like late at night. He thought he hit something on the highway, but he turned around to look, and there was actually like nothing on the road. It just really seemed like he hit something. And I think that whatever he hit basically like attached that to him.
Oh my gosh.
And I think they've gone to like pray and try to get like that demon to pass and like all this kind of stuff. But the psychic basically said that like it will never leave him.
Oh, no.
And it's just like it will stay attached to him. Like it just does not want to leave.
He can't get like an exorcism?
I mean, I guess it's like a similar thing where we like pray for it to like pass into the next life, or like pray for safety, that kind of thing. But this demon or whatever just like would not leave.
Oh my God, I'm gonna have to cleanse myself after we talk about this stuff.
I actually like, I'm scared to say this out loud because I don't want anything to happen. But yeah, like when I hear that, I like was driving the other day one day and I was just like, oh my God, please, nothing show up. I almost feel like we have to say something now to like ward off any spirits, you know? So all the spirits in this world, please don't come near us.
Don't attach yourselves to us.
Don't
leave
attach
us alone.
We are not open.
It. We're not open. We're not asking for it. Closed.
We are peaceful, but we are closed. That's right.
Yes. Peaceful but closed. We like talking about it. We don't like experiencing it.
That's right. That's right.
You know, it's funny. My Queen Mary story with Kyle kind of is like directly related to doing just that, of like asking for like something to happen.
Oh my God.
So
oh my God,
Liz. It's kind of a good segue
to
tell you guys this.
Do it.
Okay. So he actually typed all of this out. Like he was like, I need to write all this down so I don't like forget it. So I asked him if he would just send me what he typed out. And then after I read it, I'll tell you guys what like my perspective was of it, because he didn't tell me all this initially. He told me like half of it. So if anybody doesn't know, we stayed on the Queen Mary, like the boat in Long Beach, like the big ship that's like almost as old as the Titanic. It's like super haunted. Lots of people have died on it. Lots of history. So this is what my husband Kyle wrote. We arrived at the Queen Mary on Friday, July 26, 2024. We stayed 2 nights in room B333 as we were in town for Midsummer Scream. This is the convention we went to. Our room was located on the port side of the ship, directly across from room B340, which is notoriously the most haunted room on the ship and is not available for regular guest bookings. After check-in, we took our cameras and explored the ship. It was a busy day and lots of other people were doing the same thing, but as we entered areas, we would call out to spirits to communicate with us. In our room, I stood in the closet alone and called out for anything to talk to me. During this time, we experienced no direct activity, but we had a lot of fun. We had dinner at the Promenade Cafe, and the waiter told us about an experience he had closing up one day where he heard the sounds of a tour group around a corner, but when he rounded the corner, nothing was there. He said that when you go looking, you're not likely to find anything, but that the ship will always remind you where you are. We departed the ship for a while and went to the Hawk, a local bar recommended by a friend. After a couple of drinks, we went back to the ship, got our mini DV cameras, and went out to explore the deck in the dark. Admittedly, we were yucking it up, acting foolish and having a lot of fun. Around 12:30, we got back to the room, which was a little stuffy, hot day, old air conditioning, so we had the staff bring a fan for the room, and not long after that, we went to bed. At some point in the night, I woke up. I'm not sure what time it was. My phone was plugged in across the room, but if I had to guess, it would be somewhere between 2:30 and 3:30, because I felt like I had gotten some rest, but it was still pitch black outside the portholes. As I laid there trying to go back to sleep, I started to have those intrusive thoughts like you would after you see a scary movie. This happens to me from time to time. I feel like it must happen to everyone. Just so happened that I was on a notoriously haunted ship, so the thoughts were hard to shake. I must have sat there for 20 to 30 minutes just psyching myself out. I tried to think about positive or unrelated things to calm my mind and eventually entered sort of a twilight sleep where you're not quite unconscious but not really awake. While I was in this state, I heard very clearly, not from my ears but in my mind, a woman's voice say, "Wish me luck." It was as if this came from my internal monologue, but it was not in my voice. It was mid-toned, firm, but not aggressive. It sounded to be from someone in their 30s or 40s. There was no context from my day or my thoughts at the time for this exact phrase to pop into my mind, and it was a pop. It woke me up from the twilight sleep. A short time later, not more than 10 minutes, as I laid trying to go back to sleep, I felt a pressure on my chest as if someone had placed a barbell plate on top of me. It wasn't a crushing weight, but it was enough to feel like something was wrong. I checked my pulse, normal. My body otherwise felt normal. The pressure was just localized to a 10-inch or so diameter section right in the middle of my chest. I thought maybe it was heartburn or a digestive issue, so I turned onto my side, but the pressure stayed the same. At this point, I was kind of freaking out. I thought I was giving myself a panic attack just from psyching myself out about these intrusive thoughts. I started measured breathing and even said in my mind that if there was anything messing with me to stop and to leave me alone. After probably 10 cycles of measured breathing, the pressure subsided and I broke out into a cold sweat, just absolutely drenched. This whole event lasted between 2 to 4 minutes. When morning came, I was hesitant to bring this up to my wife. At this point, I thought everything was in my head and I had just given myself a minor panic attack, but I did tell her and she thought it was not at all in my head, but that the pressure was something paranormal interacting with my body. Later that day at Midsummer Scream, we attended a panel called How to Conduct a Seance, moderated by Renee Watt. What she had to say about interacting with spirits recontextualized a lot of my experience from the previous night. She talked specifically about clairaudience, which is hearing something not present to the ear, but regarded as having objective reality. From Wikipedia, clairaudience may refer not to actual perception of sound, but may instead indicate impressions of the inner mental ear, similar to the way many people think words without having auditory impressions. This is exactly what I experienced just that previous night with the woman's voice saying, "Wish me luck." Renee also spoke about the different ways that spirits can interact with your physical being, that it doesn't always manifest in a physical touch, but it can be an internal pressure or heavy emotions. I now believe that what I experienced was not a panic attack, but something placing pressure on my chest as a way to show me that they were present, that we were so close to a hotspot on the ship, and honestly that I was being kind of obnoxious while going around with my camera earlier in the day. I think the Queen Mary wanted to remind me where I was.
Oh my God.
Oh.
I know. So he told me the morning of about having like the panic attack thing. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy, whatever. And then we went to that panel, the How to Conduct a Seance is like, haha, won't this be funny? How to conduct a seance. And then it was actually like really awesome. And the speaker, she was so cool. And then after the panel, we went to get lunch and that's when he was like, I have something to tell you. I was like, what? And that was when he told me about hearing the voice say, wish me luck. And it was actually really cool. We went after lunch and we found the girl who did like the whole panel on conducting a seance, and we told her about it. And she was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I was able to like help you recognize what you experienced, like what that was and everything. But
I'm amazed he didn't roll over and like wake you up.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah.
He just went back to sleep.
But aren't you so happy he didn't? Because you wouldn't have been able to sleep.
I would have been freaking out probably.
Yeah.
And I think it's so funny that it happened to him and not me, because I feel like I'm the one that's like, somebody come haunt me. And he's like, this isn't going to happen. And then it happened to him instead. So it's just so interesting.
Were both of you going around doing that? Like,
yeah, I have all of our camera footage. I should like upload it sometime.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Somewhere.
Oh my gosh.
And we literally were staying directly across the hallway from the most haunted room on the ship, the B340. So like, it was funny because people kept coming and like trying to peek into the room and like see if anything was going on. So just a weird coincidence that we were like so close to that, that was freaky.
Yeah. Did you get to pick that, or was that just like random?
No, just by coincidence. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You guys, this is too much. I'm scared.
Sorry.
So our last segment here should hopefully be a little less scary because it's, from a kids' TV show.
So you would think, but I was terrified when I rewatched the Dollhouse one. Anyways.
So one thing we have in common, like I said before, is how much we enjoy horror movies. And I feel like a lot of us millennial kids, I feel like that started when we watched Are You Afraid of the Dark when we were younger. So if you don't know what Are You Afraid of the Dark is, it was a 30-minute show on Nickelodeon where it starts off with a group of kids who call themselves the Midnight Society, telling stories around a campfire. And each episode was its own scary story, some definitely scarier than others. And looking back, some are still scary to me today. Like I don't know how it passed as like a children's TV show.
You know what I found rewatching these episodes is that the theme song is creepier than anything on the show.
Yes. That was a good theme song.
Yeah.
Yes. I always joke that when the theme song came on, I'm like, I have to go to the bathroom. Like, I can't be in there to watch it.
Like, that was scarier than the actual show. But I am pleasantly surprised. I feel like even though it's like, obviously the acting is like, I mean, it's a kid's show, right? But I was pleasantly surprised. I think it holds up.
Yeah, it's really enjoyable. It does.
Yeah.
And I also think Goosebumps holds up. If you
I think so
ever
too.
watched those, they like Jasmine and I watch The Haunted Mask every year because it's our favorite.
We watched that one too.
Yeah, Carly Beth is really that bitch. If you know, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
don't know. I gotta watch this.
Watch The Haunted Mask and you'll understand why Carly Beth is that bitch. But yeah, they really hold up, and I don't know if it's just because it's nostalgia or whatever, but I really had a really good time watching these episodes.
Me too.
Yeah, we did too. Well, so we thought today would be really exciting for us to talk about our favorite episode, or the one that stood out to us the most from the Are You Afraid of the Dark series. So I'll go first. My favorite episode was the one called The Tale of the Doll Maker.
And it is freaking terrifying.
So scary. Like, it's always stuck out to me, this episode. Ever since I was a little girl, every time I thought about this show, like, it was just this episode that always stuck out to me. I found the episode on YouTube, by the way, and I think the episodes Candace and Liz are going to talk about are also on YouTube.
And Paramount Plus, if you have
Paramount Plus.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
That's where I watched them.
Not for the friends up here in Canada.
Yeah.
Yes. So in this episode, this girl, Melissa, is visiting her aunt and uncle for the summer. She says she used to play with a girl who was the uncle and aunt's neighbors named Susan, who lived next door. But when she visited, the aunt and uncle told her that the neighbors had moved. And so this little girl, Melissa, was really sad because she was just going to be bored all summer hanging with her aunt and uncle. So what does she do? She obviously goes over to the empty house next door, whose door is obviously open.
Obviously.
And she walks right inside and checks it out. So she walks around and then she opens this closet door, and for whatever reason, she knows to like part the clothes in that closet, and then finds these stairs that are leading up to the attic. Don't ask. Okay, just believe it. Don't ask.
And I'm just gonna say again, Black people are not gonna go into the attic. We're not doing it. We're not doing it.
Yeah, Asians either. We are nosy, but we would never intrude. So up in the attic, she sees this beautiful dollhouse that's an exact replica of the neighbor's house that she's standing in. Then she sees a door in the attic that looks like a dollhouse door, so a door into a dollhouse, and she's about to open it before her aunt rushes into the attic and tells her to go home. Her aunt tells her that the Hendersons, who are the next door neighbors, didn't just move away. They left because their daughter had disappeared last winter. The parents couldn't stand living in the house anymore because of the painful memories, so they left town. Then one day when Melissa's sleeping, she hears someone whisper her name, and out of the window, she sees a light coming from the attic from the neighbor's house. So what does she do? She gets up with her little flashlight and she runs straight to the attic next door. And she actually sees that the attic in the little miniature dollhouse is also lit up.
Yeah, absolutely not. Goodbye. It's been real.
Then there's light shining from the keyhole on that dollhouse looking door, and it's shining onto the miniature dollhouse.
Okay, but I would have like called my mom 10 minutes ago to pick me up. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I just don't understand the logic.
She's got to find her friend.
Susan would just be a doll. I don't know. Like, she's just gonna have to be a doll in the dollhouse. I can't save Susan.
Well, so she opens the door and she sees her friend Susan, who literally looks like a porcelain doll, just like walking around inside. And her face is white. She's got like rosy red cheeks. She's wearing a frilly pink dress, like total porcelain doll. And then just as she's about to like step in the door, her uncle rushes in and he stops her. He shakes her and then shows her that the door actually leads to the outside. So if she took a step through that door, she'd literally like fall out of the attic. And then the next day, the uncle boards up the dollhouse door to prevent any accidents from happening. But this smart little girl, Melissa, has other plans. And I actually thought this was pretty smart. So she takes like a big ball of yarn and she ties the end to the doorknob of that little dollhouse door. And then she holds the ball as it unravels herself.
Can I just say, though, I thought it was really hysterical that he boarded it up and it was one piece of wood.
She pulled it off with like one arm.
I was going to say the same
one
thing.
Piece of wood diagonally across the door, and then she gently pulled it off.
Yeah, he's like, that should do it.
I know.
Like, just one board.
I'm like, that would not have
So
stopped
funny.
anyone.
You really have to watch these episodes and just like take all of that, put that out of your mind and just believe it.
I know. Yeah.
It's really funny. It's silly. But she goes straight to the door in the attic. And then she takes a step into the door and she doesn't fall out of the house. She's actually in the dollhouse. So she walks around trying to find Susan, but all of a sudden the house begins to shake. She looks through the window and she sees her aunt on the outside of the dollhouse. So she's literally in that miniature like figurine dollhouse. Right next to her, her neighbor, Susan, appears in a little like chair telling her it's no use and there's no use trying to get her aunt's attention because she can't hear her. Susan's eyebrows, by the way, are drawn in like so dark and they're just so scary. Like she's just so scary. I cannot.
They made her look very creepy.
So creepy.
Yes.
And the only thing that she says repeatedly is the attic. The attic.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh my God. And so Melissa goes back to the beginning of the yarn that she had tied in the door, but she found that the door had disappeared. So there was no, like, she's never getting back into the house. And then she catches a glimpse of her hands and they're starting to turn white, like porcelain, just like the doll. So she realizes that she's turning into a doll. Then all of a sudden she sees that she has to move a bookcase so that she could open the door that would lead into the attic, just like it was in the real house. She asks Susan for help, but Susan tells her that she can't. And she shows her that when she pulls on her hand, it literally breaks off just like that because she's literally made of porcelain. And so Melissa uses all of her strength to push the bookcase aside and finds the stairs to the attic. She helps Susan up, and then as she's walking Susan to the door in the attic, her hands and like limbs are literally breaking off, which is so terrifying.
So
oh my God. And then they see the dollhouse door in the attic and they actually look outside and it looks like it leads outside to the actual real world. So they take a leap and then they jump outside. And next door, Melissa's aunt and uncle are freaking out because they thought Melissa had disappeared just like Susan. But thankfully, Melissa and Susan reappear and everyone is super relieved that Susan is found and that she's back.
It was really creepy.
It's a good one.
It is.
Yes.
It was creepy back then. I rewatched it for this and it's still freaking creepy.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
We'll link these, by the way, in our Instagram stories.
Liz, do you want to tell yours next?
Sure. So my episode that always sticks out to me was The Tale of the Dead Man's Float. This episode scared the crap out of me as a kid. I remember watching it like by myself and then not wanting to swim in a pool by myself for a long, long time afterwards.
I was going to say, if you want your kids to take swimming lessons or go swimming, don't ever show them this episode.
Do not show them
it's
this.
Terrifying.
No. The makeup in this one is so good. Yes. Like the monster. It's so scary. The episode opens in 1954, where we see a little boy, Joe, about to jump into the high school swimming pool. The lifeguard, Charlie, tells him that it's safe to swim, and instead of staying by the pool with Joe, he tells him to call him if he needs him, and then he goes to, like, make out with Joe's sister, Cindy. And while they're making out, Something at the bottom of the pool notices Joe swimming, and Joe starts to drown. Charlie and Cindy run back in when they hear him yelling, but it's too late and Joe cannot be saved. So then we jump to 1994, present day, and we meet Zeke, our main character, in science class. And he's made a volcano in class, and something goes wrong with his calculations and it explodes everywhere. And the teacher has to call for the janitor to come clean up his mess. And we see two girls, Greta and Clarice, giggling about Zeke, and they ask him what went wrong with his volcano. And he says, if you mix manganite with water, the reaction is always the same, a lava surprise or a big exploding mess. That's important for later in the story. So that's why I'm including that. So Zeke is clearly the nerd who has the crush on Clarice, who's like the cool girl, and she's on the swim team. And Zeke tells her that he has a surprise to show her. And the next day, the surprise is they get to the school early, and he takes her into the boys' locker room. And behind the lockers, hidden, there is the school pool. It's like a big hidden room that they never knew existed. So Clarice is like amazed, and she's insisting on telling the school about this so they can use their own pool instead of having to drive an hour to swim practice. And then the story does a time hop to a fully restored pool, and the swim team is actively using it. We see Clarice and Greta using the pool, but whatever it was that killed Joe, it's like lurking under the water, and the girls start commenting on like, ew, what's that smell? And whatever's down there, like it's coming for them, but they get out of the pool like just in time, so nothing like gets them. They get out. And Clarice and Zeke, they're hanging out by the pool one night, and he's telling her that he's scared of water because once as a kid, he almost drowned when seaweed got caught around his foot in a lake. But she convinces him to go out on like a little raft to the pool water with her, and then he puts his hand in the water. And then, of course, as his hand is in the water, that bad smell comes back, the smell of like acid or like rotten eggs. And after a minute of this, something pulls him down into the water, and they get back into the raft, and she doesn't believe him at first until then something starts trying to like flip the raft over, and they're like bouncing around in the pool, and then they get thrown into the water, and something starts drowning both of them. But the janitor, who we then learn is Charlie, the lifeguard from the start of the story, shows up and he pulls them both out of the pool. Charlie tells them the history of the pool and how multiple people drowned after Joe.
And he has so much trauma.
Oh my gosh, this poor guy. He's like never been able to do anything with his life because of this.
He just became a janitor at the pool. Like, I know. It's very sad.
I feel so bad for him. It's like that was his life.
He's saving lives now, guys.
I know. I did freaking love the little love story happening between the nerd and the popular girl, though. And she's like, I'm going to help you learn how to swim because you're just cute.
So Charlie tells them that in order to build the pool, the high school, they had to first remove an old cemetery and move all the bodies.
Naturally.
But of course, yes. But he suspects that one body was left behind, and it has been just wanting to get revenge. So they come up with a plan, and because the monster is invisible, they have to figure out a way to be able to see it. So Zeke plans to douse it with methyl orange, because when you douse something acidic with methyl orange, it will turn red.
Ah!
Yes. Science nerd.
Yeah.
So they go to the science room to get the chemicals, and when he pours the methyl orange in the pool, a red ooze slowly starts to take shape, and then slowly this disgusting zombie, like decomposing corpse slowly rises out of the water. And it has like a skeleton face, but it's covered in like big red fleshy like chunks rags, of like hanging skin. Yeah, like rags. And it kind of looks like a swamp monster, but it's like all red. It's like a corpse. Yeah.
I literally went, wow.
It's terrifying. Yeah, I know. I'm like, they did that. Like, they went there. Yeah. So it comes out of the pool, and they run into the locker room, and they're trying to figure out what to do. Meanwhile, poor Charlie is having like a panic attack. He's like laying on the like bench, like not breathing or whatever. And they're like, what do we do? And then we see like the red bubbly ooze starting to come up from a little drain on the floor. And then all of a sudden the big monster, the corpse guy, is like standing in the locker room with them. So he's able to like transport himself through like drains and stuff. So Clarice runs back to the science room, and she grabs a bottle of manganite. And when she's about to open it, Zeke knocks it out of her hands and into the pool because she isn't wearing protective gloves and she would have burnt her hands. But he like knocks it right into the pool. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And so then she has to dive into the pool to get the bottle out of the water. And of course, when she's in the water, the monster shows back up and Clarice just like goes into shock and the corpse is like slowly coming at her. And Zeke jumps in to distract it. And then it's coming towards Zeke, like, oh my gosh, like, what do we do? But as it's coming towards him, Clarice is able to get out of the water, put the gloves on, and she pours the manganite onto the corpse right before it gets to him. And the corpse is like, it's like a scream, it's like bubbling, it's like oozing, it's melting, and then it just like evaporates away. And Clarice remembered from Zeke's volcano that manganite mixed with water would create an explosion. So the story ends with Zeke and Clarice now dating, and they're hanging out by the pool as she swims and he reads his science book, and Charlie, the lifeguard janitor, can finally move on from his past traumas.
I feel like he should be the principal, okay, after this.
I know. I liked that it was like a cute love story at the same time, though. I thought that was sweet. But yeah, that monster was...
It was so scary. Oh my gosh. And the shots of it, like, just, like, you don't see it under the water, but, like, of the kids, like, feet, and it's, like, coming at them, like, that scared the crap out of me.
The fact that there's something in a pool would always just freak me out.
Yes. Like, you don't know what's under your feet. Like, that is so scary. Yeah.
For sure. That's a good one. That's a good choice.
Yes.
So I picked an episode called The Tale of the Prom Queen, which honestly, if you know me at all, it's so my vibes. So this episode is really rad because it's giving Susie Q vibes. Do you guys remember that movie, Susie Q?
Yes.
If you don't know what that is, it is one of the greatest movies Disney ever made, and it used to air on Disney Channel around Halloween about a ghost named Susie Q who died in a car crash and befriends a teenage boy who just lost his dad. This episode was similarly spooky in that it's about the ghost of a girl who was waiting for her prom date at the cemetery when she gets hit by a car due to the fog, and her date never picked her up. Like, she was waiting for him at the cemetery gates, never picked her up. No one knows why. Revisiting this episode was so fun. The dialogue and the 90s vibes were everything. Like, it was just so funny. The story picks up with Dee Dee and two boys named Jam and Greg.
Jam.
And she meets them in the cemetery. And it already starts out weird because, like, why are you in the cemetery? But she says she's visiting a friend and dropping off flowers and that she used to live in town, but she no longer lives in town. And one of the boys has a crush on Dee Dee because she's cute. And they talk to her about this urban legend of their town about the prom queen and how she still kind of, haunts the cemetery. And Dee Dee finds it really interesting, and they decide to go on a quest to find out where the prom queen's gravestone is, and then it kind of snowballs into doing research, and they all find out that the prom queen's date was her boyfriend Ricky, and he didn't pick her up because he never got the message that he was supposed to pick her up at those gates. And when he found out what happened, he drove himself off of a bridge because he was so distraught.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
I was like, that
That's
escalated
dark.
quickly.
Yeah, it's like two tragic tales. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So they decide to do a seance to contact Ricky and tell him.
Oh my gosh.
And tell him that he needs to pick her up at the gates so that she can stop waiting. Okay. And so they're like in a boat near the cemetery, and they go and try to do this seance, and they get interrupted because a friend of Jam and Greg scares them. And, Greg gets really upset, and he's like, that's so stupid. Like, why would you do that? Because he was really scared. And they end up going back to the graveyard at one point, and they see a car driving, and it's like a 50s car, like old fashioned, and it drives up, and this ghostly man is sitting in the driver's seat, and he looks cute in 50s, he's got his hair slicked back, and he just kind of nods at them. And then Dee Dee, who we've been hanging out with this entire time, takes out her ponytail, and she spins around, and she's wearing a prom dress. And we find out that Dee Dee is actually the ghost of Judy Larson, the prom queen, who was just waiting for someone to come and be able to help her and Ricky move on. And the deal was that she couldn't leave the graveyard unless somebody took her with them. So those boys took her like to the library so that they could research. They took her, you know, to do the seance. So she could only leave with them. And she had no idea that Ricky didn't get her message to meet her at the cemetery. So then it was her idea to do the seance, to tell Ricky where to meet, and then they get to move on into the afterlife together.
Aww.
Okay, that ended really sweet.
Man,
I know.
that is so sweet.
Yeah, it was super cute. It wasn't necessarily scary. I just really enjoyed the storyline.
Yeah, like some of these episodes were definitely scarier than others, but they all had such a good story.
Yes. I honestly didn't see Dee Dee being the prom queen coming. Like
What a twist.
I know. I was like, oh, that's smart. Like, and I should have, because at the beginning she's like really weird and evasive about why she's at the cemetery. And I should have figured that out, but I just didn't, because I remembered the episode vaguely. And I knew like this vague story, but I just couldn't really remember like details. But yeah, so I was like, oh, she's the prom queen. Okay, it makes sense. Now it makes sense. And I just enjoyed that one of the boys' names was Jam.
I love that.
If you guys remember Are You Afraid of the Dark, or if you had any favorite episodes that you think we should watch from Are You Afraid of the Dark, please leave it in our comments on Instagram or email us, because yeah, it's just such a throwback and it's so nostalgic and we love it.
Submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society.
Yay!
Death's thrown on the campfire.
Yeah.
Well, we hope you survived this spooky episode of Millennial TeaV, and tune in next week for our regularly scheduled broadcast of Laguna Beach Season 3. Goodbye.
Bye.